Hello, I'm just checking that my beautiful necklace is working properly. Yeah, it is. Okay. It's quite heavy for a small person particularly. So, last week I went on Spotify and I was greeted with this. New terms and conditions, okay. Oh, please take a few minutes to read and understand them. Right then, I'll do that. We may collect information stored on your mobile device, such as contacts, photos, or media files. Okay. We may also collect information about your location based on, for example, your phone's GPS location, or other forms of locating mobile devices, like Bluetooth. Right. We may also collect the sensor data, e.g. the data about the speed of your movements, such as whether you're running, walking, or in transit. Getting used to this now, really. You may integrate your Spotify account with third-party applications. If you do, we may receive similar information related to your interactions with that service. Right, fine, whatever. What is going on here? When did this become such a thing? When did we become so happy just hand over everything like that? To be fair, they want to access your contacts so that they can find your friends, they can share things. They want your photos to make cover art, apparently. They want the location to help you find the music that's trending in your area. And the speed of your movement. This is actually, to be fair, pretty cool, because they have a running feature where they can make sure that they're delivering beats that match your running, which, if you work out, it's really cool when that happens, something to keep motivate you to keep going at the same speed. But the thing is, there are all of these other features that come up. There's huge amount of information that they get about us through all of these little bits of data. So when they released this new terms and conditions last week, people kind of freaked out a bit. And then they said sorry for not communicating it properly, which tends to be the standard thing. And they went through and explained why do they use all these different features. And Wired wrote an article about the justification for all this data-hungry stuff. And they wrote this thing about third parties. This is arguably the gross part, sharing things with third parties. But it's also not new or unique. Advertising is part of staying in business. Hang on a minute. What am I paying $9.99 a month for? They don't need advertising to stay in business. They've got my money already. They've got loads of people's money already. I think that Spotify wants to have its cake and eat it too. They also, in this bit where Wired explain it, they go on to say, and Spotify shares data, which it says is de-identified, as opposed to specific personal information. So Spotify isn't sharing your personal information with your name on it with these other companies. The problem is that this is completely meaningless. Because, and this is Bruce Schneier, security expert, writing quite a long time ago, it only takes a small named database for someone to pry the anonymity off a much larger anonymous database. With more than one data set and the right algorithm, nearly any data set can be de-anonymized, particularly if you live in a country where the government has sort of ID cards, or you have an electoral roll, some kind of register of where people live, voting register, things like that. Often that data is made public or is easy to obtain. So your data is actually incredibly valuable. And this is why data brokers exist. Corporations whose business it is to collect and combine all of these data sets. So LexisNexis, which is an interesting name, they help uncover the information that commercial organizations, government agencies, and non-profits need to get a complete picture of individuals, businesses, and assets. They're in the business of knowing stuff about you. And Axiom, which is a proper sci-fi dystopia-sounding name, only Axiom connects people across channels, time, and name change at scale by linking our vast repository of offline data to the online environment. It's a really big money business, and the possibilities for it are endless. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about that in a minute. We're used to the situation, right, though? Sharing all of our stuff like this. What about Facebook? Lots of free stuff we get for free. It's fantastic. I think we all feel like we do know Facebook's game. They show us adverts and we get to socialize for free. We know that that's the contract and we're pretty much cool with it. I don't actually share that much stuff on Facebook, and I filled out some of the very few basic details, but not much more than that. I haven't filled in likes and stuff particularly. So I tend to get the adverts that are aimed at the average 28-year-old woman, like dresses, makeup, shampoo, things like that. But what happens when Facebook gets a little bit more information about you? So 2 weeks ago, my mum died. And this was a really horrible thing to happen. We kind of knew it was coming. But we didn't want any of our friends and family to find out about it from some poorly worded social media post. Right? This is a very modern day issue that we have here. So we didn't post anything about it. We didn't write anything about it. We rang people on the phone. The next day, Facebook suggested that I might be interested in Goodwill Family Funeral Directors. How? Surely a coincidence. How? So I went straight to my little iMessage group chat I have with my brother and sisters, and I asked them, have any of you posted something on Facebook about this? I thought we said we weren't going to do this. Baby sister, not me. Must just be a coincidence. Strange coincidence. Then my other sister. Sorry, that was me. I Facebook Mads because she's in Australia now. My sister had told her friend via a private message. So my sister had used the words mum and died in a Facebook message to her friend Maddie. And then Facebook made the connection. They know that I'm her sister. We have that little relationship folded out. And so they're like, oh, she's her sister, then I guess you'll want this advert then. It just goes to show how much Facebook knows and how much complexity it can grasp from such a tiny amount of information, despite
these. Our business is not based on having information about you. You're not our product. Our product are these, and this watch, and Macs, and so forth. And so we run a very different company. I think everyone has to ask, how do companies make their money? Follow the money. And if they're making money mainly by collecting gobs of personal data, I think you have a right to be worried, and you should really understand what's happening to that data. And the companies, I think, should be very transparent about it.
And you know who he's hinting at here? Facebook and Google. This really pissed off Mark Zuckerberg. Mark Zuckerberg went on and he was just like, oh, yeah, well, I don't know why Apple's products are so expensive. Why don't they provide everything for free like we do? But of course, Facebook's business model is providing these things. So if we're exchanging all of our data for services, what about our privacy? Well, Eric Schmidt, the CEO of Google, has something to say about that.
You don't want anyone to know. Maybe you should be doing it in the first place.
I'll just do that again.
If you have something that you don't want anyone to know, maybe you should be doing it in the first place.
Yeah, if you have something you don't want anyone to know, you shouldn't be doing it in the first place. But as Edward Snowden says in Citizen 4, people saying they don't care about rights to privacy because they have nothing to hide are no different from people saying, I don't care about freedom of speech because I have nothing to say. So what we need to know is, how do we spot these dodgy business models? I mean, I know they're everywhere, but what are the key signs? What are the problems that lead to selling user data? First of all, they're free, and they don't offer you an option to pay because your data is far more valuable than a monthly subscription or a one-off payment. Unless you're Spotify and you want to sell your user data and get the monthly payment as well. You can't get your data out. It's a silo. There might be ways that you can, there's probably myriad ways you can import all of your data into their services, but there's very rarely ways to extract it. Or if you do want to extract it, they will make it difficult for you. If you could take your data elsewhere, it's too easy for you to leave. They don't want you to leave. It's closed source. So you can't take your data out and roll your own version. You can't take the source code, build your own, and do it all your own way. It's contagious. It can be bolted onto your site, and it makes it easy to share, but it also makes it easy for you to get data about those sharers. This Mashable page is classic. Right, so this is just the top of an article. Before you even got to the body copy, this is how much of the page is dedicated to sharing. Before you even got to any body text, you have 3 Facebook and 3 Twitter buttons before you even know what you're really sharing. I use this plugin called Ghostery that tells me if a site that I'm using has trackers on it and other scripts. It blocks any specific type of script that I want to block. I mean, there's also AdBlock you've probably heard of that does a similar thing. But Ghostery is pretty cool because it tells you what type of script it is. And for example, I don't want to block typekit. That's a script. I quite like Python, so I let it run that script, but I don't let it run other scripts. And so this is the New York Times. This has 14 trackers on its homepage. And as you can see from the details, like most of them are advertising, analytics, beacons, like all these things used to sort of grab your data. That's really normal. That's a pretty standard content-driven site. Using the Firefox Lightbeam extension, which is pretty handy, it tells you where all the trackers are going to. So I can see that all the trackers, those 14 trackers on the New York Times website, connected me to 36 third-party sites. So it's sending my data out to 36 third-party sites. Everything they can find out about me all goes off to those other sites. Nothing I can do about it. So why are we putting up with this? Why are we, as people who are more tech-savvy, who have a bit more awareness about what's going on, why do we deal with it? I think we are starting to come to terms with the issues with it, of late because performance. Because the one thing that trackers do is make your site really slow. So here's a funny story. Last month, Nilay Patel of The Verge wrote a post writing about how much the mobile web sucks because browsers suck and they're not performant enough. Note my little ghostery in the corner telling you that all the trackers that are on The Verge. And the web community was in uproar. It's not the browser's fault, it's your trackers. Think of the performance. And then loads of people wrote different posts about it. Lots of interesting talks about advertising and business models and how we make money and versus the web performance and how important that is. It's all about the user experience, and slow websites are a poor user experience, and as we as developers, we can make websites faster, so we should push back against our bosses who want more scripts. Hello? Am I the only one here that was thinking trackers aren't just bad because they make things slow? They're bad because they invade our privacy. And to be fair, Les Orchard's article he wrote did talk about privacy in more detail. I feel like someone just set up the entire vendor hall from an awful tech conference in my living room. Seriously, could you folks just not pick 1 or 2 or 10? Did you hit up every booth and say, yeah, cool, sign us up? I feel thoroughly spindled and folded and researched here. What I find baffling is that so few of these other articles even touched on the privacy element or the fact that you're selling all of these users' data. We flame each other for our choice of SaaS versus less or WordPress versus Drupal all the time on Twitter and on the web. But we'll just give up other people's data on the sites that we build in the blink of an eye. We won't think any more to it. Add another script, add some more analytics, boss is happy with me. I do exactly the same thing. So I'm not going to lecture anyone on this. It is far easier for us to talk about the implementation details of what we're doing, the tools and the toys and all the exciting stuff, rather than the impact of the things that we are building on the world. And as Mike Montero said in his talk, How Designers Destroyed the World, when designers ignore the effect their work has on the environment, they are at best negligible, at worst culpable. We need to be more responsible for the work that we're putting out there. And we need to implement a more ethical and holistic approach to design. Because design without ethics, that's just manipulation. You're just manipulating people, getting them to do what you want. So this is Maslow's hierarchy of needs. With the most basic fundamental needs we have as humans at the bottom, and the kind of nice to have at the top, and it works its way up. So our physiological needs, things like our need to eat and sleep in order to stay alive, and once we've satisfied those, then we can look at keeping ourselves safe and so on. So Aaron Walters of MailChimp took Maslow's hierarchy and mapped it to user experience design. So this is really cool. Mapping it from functional to pleasurable. So once you've got a product that you've made functional, you've got the bare minimum in there, then you can make it reliable, then you can make it usable, and then you can add all the extra nice stuff on top that makes it pleasurable and enjoyable to use. It's a great concept. However, it is largely concerned with superficial design and decoration. Like, how do you make something pleasurable? Oh, you add all these nice little bits on top, but what about the impact of the product itself? The thing is that decoration, making things shiny, perpetuates the status quo. But design, truly thinking about the impact your work has the potential to alter it. So at Indie, we've kind of made up a different triangle, because triangles are cool. The foundation of a product, it needs to be private, secure, accessible, and sustainable, because that respects our human rights. And then when we've achieved that, we can then make it functional, convenient, and reliable. And this is the area where performance will come in, because that respects the human effort. That respects what people are experiencing when they visit your site. And then we can layer the delight on top, because that respects human experience. And we call this the 3 R's of ethical design. I didn't do the name, but I think it's funny. The thing is, if we don't create something that has these founding principles at the bottom, if it's not private, or it's not secure, or it's not accessible, or it's not sustainable, we are not respecting the human rights. In fact, we're building the backs of our products. We're building it on the backs of our users, the humans that use them. And the problem is that it's these kind of dark design that we get from Silicon Valley and other startup-y companies. We get products that they do respect your human experience and human effort. They make these things a joy to use, but they take advantage of their users. So what's the alternative? What are we going to do about it? As users, how do we find and use services that won't just take our data? And as creators, how do we create alternatives? How can we create alternative technology that competes with free? It's going to be hard because people have been given a diet of that sort of sugary, sweet, full-fat, free goodness, but it's a diet that's very bad for them. We need to start at the top with better and more realistic business models. This might be more traditional business models or new alternative ones. We need to follow these principles of you give me a product, I pay you for that product. You provide me with a service, I pay you for that service. We both benefit from those sides of the bargain. And that business can be sustained forever as it's a fair exchange. The money doesn't necessarily have to be directly from one person to another. I'm not going to get into sort of economic detail right now, but there are more sort of socialist and social business models that we can look at. And people understand what this trade is. They understand what they're getting for their money. It's not deceptive. It's not a con like the other services we get online. And the problem with how many startups are founded nowadays is that venture capital can't produce sustainable business in the majority of ways that it's used. Because the thing is, it's about turning a large profit, getting a big return on your investment in a very short period of time. You put in 100K, you see 100K turned into 1 million, you take the money and you run away. This is why we see so many startups closing down or being bought out. Venture capital and free services tends to result in the sale of user data. When a product is launched without a viable, sustainable business model and gets a huge amount of users, its most valuable asset is its users. And so inevitably, that's why the user data ends up being sold for a big profit and a quick exit. It isn't necessarily anyone's intentions when they start out building a cool service that they're going to sell their user data. I don't think many people are that evil. I think Mark Zuckerberg might be. But still, we don't have to do this. We don't need to always be thinking about exit strategies. What's the exit strategy of your local plumber? He's not looking to scale up, quick growth, get out. And we don't need to all be like Silicon Valley. We need to stop worshipping this way of doing things. But still, we can't expect people to up and leave free services without a very good reason. We've got to make our products and services better in a way that satisfies all of the triangle. So we've talked about the importance of privacy and sustainability. What about accessibility? Because this is incredibly important to me, and I know that we've got a couple of other talks that are going to talk about this as well, so this is going to be really good. Accessible design is incredibly important, and there are huge amounts of benefits. So what do I mean when I say accessibility? Accessibility is not just wheelchairs and screen readers. Accessibility is the degree to which a product is available to as many people as possible, regardless of disability, regardless of situation, regardless of status. When we design a product to include as many people as possible, we could call it universal design or inclusive design or accessible design. All of these things, in essence, have the same core. Universal design is important because by not giving that accessible design enough consideration, we are potentially excluding a huge amount of people from using our products. And if you're interested in money, then you don't want to be getting rid of your customers. And even people with long-term difficulties benefit from universal design. So who here, I can see who here wears glasses. Quite a lot of people wear contact lenses. Who here has RSI? I have very bad RSI. And these are just temporary impairments. They change throughout the flux of our life. They're up and down. Sometime one day we might break our hand, won't be able to type. Accessibility can help all of these things. We also have environmental impairments that accessibility can help with. So if you try to use your phone in bright sunlight outdoors, some better, more accessible attention to the design of a screen and contrast could really help with that. Or coming from abroad and not being able to access the internet. So maybe offline storage, sites that work on a slow connection. They're different types of impairments, but they can also be helped with more considerate design. And so design decisions made in the name of accessibility will largely benefit everyone. And when something is more accessible to everyone, it doesn't hurt the experience of an expert or someone that's been using the thing for a long time, but it does make it better for new people, people that you want to bring into your product. Accessibility is usability. And when we're making our products and services accessible, we also want to make them as inclusive as possible, so diversity is also key. So diversity are the characteristics that make us up as individuals. So this could be your age, your ability, ethnicity, socioeconomic class, personal background, gender, education. There are so many of these different things that make us up as individuals. And all of these characteristics that we have give us very unique needs and unique outlooks. And different perspectives on the world around us and what products need to do in order to provide value to us. And this is why discussing and understanding other people's needs and perspective is very good research and helps us better understand the landscape we're designing for. And by this, I mean talking to real people, talking to them about their situation, not just looking at analytics and seeing what the people who already use our website have, what their screen size is. That's not as valuable information. And we also need to remember that diversity is put off by elitism. Because this is a bit of a problem that we have in the tech industry. We love designing things for the approval of our friends. We want to do cool stuff that looks cool, and everyone's going to say how wonderful we are and tweet about us and write Facebook posts about us, and it's brilliant. But actually, that kind of design isn't necessarily the design for everyone. And if we're not a diverse organization or group or team working on these products, then we won't design a product for a diverse audience. It's very difficult to understand those needs. And you don't just want to always be designing for some other person. That's colonialist design. The more diverse a team is, the greater their capacity is for empathy, the more areas they cover, and the more likely a product is to solve and serve the problems of the many, rather than the few that just fit the same mold as the team members. And diverse appeal will help spread tech beyond the digital elite. That's what they call themselves, that's not what I would call them. But this is one of the problems that we have when we are trying to create products that help enable our privacy. Would your family and friends install Linux? Use Ghostery? Probably not. I mean, even though Ghostery is a fantastic tool, very easy to use, you just install it and go. Most people don't know what a browser extension is. Linux is not an easy thing to install. First thing I have to do here is download the Linux distribution of your choice. What? I don't know which distribution I would want. We need to acknowledge the major weaknesses that we have in the tech community if we're going to make true alternative technology. And we need to make our products accessible to a wide audience. Because part of this is educating consumers and everyday people about the importance of these alternatives. We need to make a difference before it's too late. And to make alternatives before a lack of privacy and a lack of human rights is actually enshrined in government regulation. I live in the UK, I'm looking to leave the UK because the kinds of laws that they want to pass about our privacy, I don't want to be around for that. Problem is, I'm trying to find another country that's better. And it's not looking terribly hopeful right now. So we need to do as much as we can to talk to governments, tell them what they're saying is stupid. When David Cameron is saying things like, we need to ban encryption, and how foolish that is. We need to, because the problem is that these politicians, they don't necessarily have experts telling them how technology works. So they're going to say wild and dangerous things. It's our responsibility as the people who understand tech to make it communicable to everybody else. That's a designer's role, to design the communication in a way that's accessible as well. And this includes putting things into terms that consumers, that everyday people understand, constructing coherent narratives and putting time into really understanding how these problems impact others and how we can actually create real solutions. And diversity is a very important part of this because it's giving us a better understanding. We may also need to educate the community around us. We need to make sure that we're having these pretty scary, awkward conversations with each other because we tend to live in a bubble where we assume that everyone else shares the same principles, the same level of knowledge, and the same beliefs as us. You get this a lot from Twitter. I thought that everyone voted for the same political party as me in the UK elections based on Twitter. The election results told me very strongly otherwise. We need to wean people off these existing systems, but we can't just expect people to up and leave cool stuff they're already using when no alternative exists. You can't go around telling people leave Facebook when there's nowhere else for them to go. I'm still on Facebook. I hate Facebook. But all the while, I get to see my grandpa, who's 90 years old, writing little messages and comments on everyone's photos. I'm going to stay on Facebook. I need to give him an alternative to join. Because good usability, good user experience will attract users and will keep them. So we need to create things that are this good in order to build products that will have financial stability. A great user experience design involves design as a holistic practice. So when I'm saying design a hell of a lot, and I'm not talking just about typography and color and aesthetic form. Those things are part of design, but they are not all of design. Design is every decision that we make. Design is designing the business model to provide a good user experience. Design is designing the back end so it supports that good user experience. Design is writing a good front end so it creates a good user experience. Design has to come from the beginning of a project, and it has to come from the top. If your boss isn't in on it, it's not going to happen, is it? It might sound a bit weird and different when I talk about us as designers and people who create things being responsible for stuff like business models. And why should the intention of a product be the responsibility of the designer? It's because when we design things, we design them to hit goals. And when our goals are to learn as much about users as possible, so we have valuable data to sell, we end up skewing our design to extract this information. This is why we have completion on profiles. This is why Facebook looks like this. It's not good user experience. Like, how does this serve the user? I mean, some people really enjoy filling out forms because it massages their ego to think that somebody else actually cares about what they think. But this is just a survey, really, isn't it? What music do you like? What football teams do you like? It's not going to give you anything. Good user experience means that designers must understand business, and business and product people need to understand design. It doesn't mean putting the person who's in charge of typography at the top of your company. It means that we are all designers, and every decision we make as a solution to a problem is a design decision. We also need to understand the models of the components and the tools that we use and that we work with. I am not going to be putting my data into your Google form anytime soon. That's just making it too easy for them. This way, we're voting with our actions and with our money. We should be putting our money into companies that we think are going to make a positive change. We don't need to just put it into more of these big mega corporations, these conglomerate monopoly things. We can't believe in creating beautiful, free, sustainable products and then just use closed, sell your data products. It doesn't work. And I say this as someone who is trying to do that, trying not to use any of the dodgy stuff. It is really painful, I'm not going to lie. So Sendy, this is a really cool thing for self-hosting, sending email newsletters. I use that. CryptoCat is a secure chat. And GitLab is a self-hosted alternative to GitHub. And all of these, they're actually generally very, very good user experiences. But there's stuff that they don't have that you'd like, and you want all your friends to be on them too, and things like that. But we need to use these things so we understand how to make them better, and we can help make them better. We need to use alternative products so that we can help make them better. We need to make really good alternatives to the bad tech of today. We need products that have sustainable business models where money is exchanged for goods. Venture capital, dodgy area. There's potential for good venture capital, but dodgy area. We need products that are accessible to both the people who create them, the techie, nerdy, enthusiastic people, and to everyday people. We need products that are diverse and that accommodate the needs of many. If people don't want, and it's definitely not going to be easy. It's definitely going to be worthwhile. Thank you.